Hey guys, my name is Rudy Perez. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OneCarPayment.com. Also the radio host of We Talk About Cafe and Cars. In today's episode, we actually talk with Mike Spinelli of TheDrive.com. He's an executive producer for TheDrive.com, also a blogger, publicist, loves cars just like we do. The cool thing about Mike is he talks about what he's going to do, where he's going, and pretty much what the future of the automotive industry is looking like in the next couple of years. Enjoy the video. Big shout out to Linda Merkel. She's the executive director of Wheels on America. It's a museum based out of Allentown, PA. Pretty much about cars all day, every day. Cool place to hang out and bring family, friends, and look at history. There'll be information on a link below. Click on it, go there, subscribe to us, and I'll catch you at the end of the video. Talk to you then. Cool. Hey guys, my name is Rudy Perez. I'm CEO and One Car Payment provider. Today we actually have the man himself, Michael. Say, Mike, how do you say it?
Mike Spinelli.
There we go.
That's
Mike
right.
Spinelli.
The man himself.
So we're here at American Cars Museum out in Allentown, PA. And Mike's going to talk about who he is, what he's about, what got him started, what made him the man, the myth, the method, the legend himself, do what he does. So Mike.
Well, that's I don't know if I can live up to that kind of send up, but I'll take it.
Do it.
I don't know. Like, I'm just some guy. Like, I started out into cars.
Okay.
I was also a journalism major, so I wrote, and then I eventually put those two things together and became an automotive journalist. And everything kind of spun out of there. So I don't know where you want to start. If you want to,
let's start from, like we talked before earlier today about Jalopnik.
Yeah.
And then let's go to where you are now, because there is probably some development that we're going to talk later on. Not now, off camera.
A lot's happened.
A lot's happened.
Yeah. So so Jalopnik. How do I start? So before Jalopnik started, that was 2004. I was a .com drone back in in the early days of the internet. Worked for an internet consulting firm. I got out of journalism school. There were no jobs in journalism.
Okay.
So I kind of found the internet thing, and I got really into how it works. And I just thought, like everybody else, that this would be a great way to change the way people get information, share information, all that stuff. I mean, of course, back then it was just a dopey web page and HTML1. And Comic Sans fonts everywhere. So that was basically how we started.
That was preschool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, so went through that whole process. So, that started around 1995, 96, right? So then rode that out. And by 2002, the .com world spit me out on the other end, and I ended up doing market research for IBM, which, if you've read Dilbert, you basically know my job, right? So it was the short sleeve shirt with the tie and the I mean, it was exactly as bad as you'd think it was, or as nerdy. I mean, I guess some people thought it would have been great, but I mean, I was doing these really bulky, crazy, mind-numbing market research projects, and I got an email one day from Nick Denton, who was, the guy that started Gawker, Gizmodo, all those early, what they were calling pro blogs, or blogs that were paying people to blog. Yeah, exactly. And they were growing, And so they wanted to get more male viewers or readers, whatever you called it back then. And they wanted to start a car site. But, it was like you couldn't. What people say about New Yorkers and cars, like you couldn't get more of the stereotype of where Nick was. Not even love-hate, not knowing it. I mean, like, Nick was from the UK, but like he came to New York, like he didn't know, he didn't. I don't even know if he drove, like he didn't but he just knew that cars were a thing that he wanted to be in. And so he needed somebody to start that off. And like, I don't know whether he even looked for anybody else after I answered that email, because back in the .com days, we sort of all knew each other. Yeah. And so I answered the email, and he said, "Here, just go and do 2 weeks worth of posts." on cars. I had never written a car review before. I mean, I'd written professionally, but I'd never written a car review. I was into cars. We can kind of go back further than Jalopnik in a minute, but I read a lot of car reviews. I knew what I thought I liked in a car review, and I just started writing furiously because I needed to write 18 posts a day to make up the website. I was the only one writing this website. And so in 2004, in October, we launched with 2 weeks worth of posts that I had written, right? Little, back in the day, it was like little snippets. It was like 100 words here, 100 words there, 200 words. And, I made fun of things a little bit, tried not to be too mean, but and then tried to write more reviews on my own and try to learn that craft a little bit. So, that was how it started, and it was part-time. I was still working at IBM. I wasn't working for IBM. I worked at an office just on the IBM account, right?
Gotcha. So, you're doing 2 jobs.
So I was doing 2 jobs, and I would wake up really early, do like 2 or 3 posts. I'd go to work, work a little bit, write a post, go to lunch, write 3 or 4 posts. You know what I mean? It was like I'd find some whatever was on, and it was really interesting. I don't know how deep into the background of what was going on in the internet at the time you want to get, but
that's for another show.
Yeah. I mean, the short story is that car magazines hadn't quite figured out what the internet was supposed to be about yet, and that was it was 10 years in, and they still hadn't quite gotten it. There wasn't a great automotive website that I would go to, except that all the action in the car world was happening in the forums. So you would go to like VW Vortex, or you'd go to Audi World, or Corvette. I mean Lamborghini Mania. I don't even remember them. I mean they go back.
And it's funny because a lot of ones that are still, they opened up 10, 15 years ago, are still around now.
Oh yeah, I mean they've all been consolidated by larger companies, but back then there was a site that grew out of the VW Vortex community called the Car Lounge, and the Car Lounge was what Reddit is now to cars. It was like that was the greatest cross-company, cross-brand community that there was, that I thought, because there were great conversations happening. There were people that would help each other out with builds. I mean, they would, drive each other to the, H2O or whatever car event they were going to, and it became kind of a thing. And they were bubbling up stories, and so I found, I sort of started, using them as a source, trying to get some of the conversations that were happening on Car Lounge over to Jalopnik. I would go to the European sites where there were a lot of really happening European sites. World Car Fans was one of them, and they would get up early. They would put stuff up before,
Oh, because the time difference.
Time difference, right? So I'd wake up and they'd have all this stuff. So I'd start covering, because I didn't have access to press materials or anything like a real car magazine. So I would just use whatever I could find, and I cobbled together this website that people started reading. To my surprise, that people actually read it, because I mean I was so nose down in it, I didn't even know what was happening. So
you were swimming, but you're like, all right, where's land?
Right. And it wasn't until I went to my first car show as a Jalopnik employee in 2005. It was like I went to Geneva because Autoblog was our natural competitor. And it was crazy because Autoblog back then was owned by a company called Weblogs Inc. And they were a competitor with Gawker, and so Nick and Jason Calacanis were the 2 titans of the blogging industry, and they were at each other's, they were sort of frenemies, I guess. And so Nick's mission for me was to beat Autoblog, which they were already established and they were big, but so they were really big in Detroit. So I went to Europe, and back then European flights were really cheap. So I jumped out to Geneva for $400 or something, and because if memory serves me right, you actually started before even New York Times. Anyone else really went out there to cover cars? Well, especially like there were reviewers.
Before. Exactly.
But there were no sites. You're right. I mean, because a New York Times would eventually start its own car site inside itself. So, but you're absolutely right. So, but luckily at the same time, car shows in Europe were starting to allow bloggers, if that's what we were called, which I guess we were, into the press days.
Yeah.
And that was giant, because all of a sudden, like, Autoblog would be there, but all of the European guys would be there. And they were reading Jalopnik just as I was reading their site. So I showed up in Geneva, and there were all these guys there that I sort of knew.
You're fans of, sort of.
I was fans of them, and apparently they were reading Jalopnik, and so we became a little bit of a cabal. And so that community spirit helped Jalopnik get to whatever level it got to that eventually pushed it over the edge.
Yeah.
But like bootstrapping the thing, it was all about just a bunch of guys trying to help each other out, trying to get traffic from each other, you know, grab each other's audience, and we just shared stuff, and it was great. And that was so I sort of focused on Europe after that, because Autoblog seemed to have Detroit sewn up, and Detroit was a little more conservative anyway. They were hard to get into, so.
But I think it's more of them becoming of, it's a new medium, we're not new to this,
right?
Let's keep an eye on it, and then make those steps.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your first car.
Okay.
Your very first one. I turned 16, just got my license.
All right. Well, I got two.
How did I do this?
I got two first cars.
Oh.
And this is how this happened, right? And I'm going to try to make the first one quick, because it's a long story. We used to go to a butcher, right? So this is in the early 80s. Like, people still went to butchers,
They
right?
still do now?
I guess. I mean, if you live in a place where there's a butcher, you go to the butcher.
If you live on PA, we still go to butchers.
Right, there you go. But so Dennis was our butcher. Dennis the Butcher. I guess that was his real name. That wasn't his like mob name. It was his real name. It's Dennis the Butcher would probably mean something else. Dennis the Butcher said he knew that I was into cars. I was a little kid. I was about 12, maybe 11 or 12. He knew that I was into cars. We used to talk about cars. He loved Mustangs. I loved Mustangs. He had a Mustang that he wanted to sell. It was $75, right?
Wow.
And so I didn't know what kind of condition it was. I had $75 in my piggy bank, and I somehow convinced him and the gas station that I wanted to, well, it was friends with my parents. I convinced them to drag this car back to my parents' house, like back to our house, into the driveway. And it was a 66, 289, 3-speed. And I didn't know if it ran or not. It looked like it was pretty straight, but I was 12 years old. Like, what did I know?
Yeah, your eyes are big,
so
full of cars.
I'm thinking, like, me and my dad could work on this, and my dad was a jeweler, right? He worked on things this big. He couldn't, he was like, my uncle was the car guy in the family. I figured I could grab him to come over and help me. I bought a Chilton manual, right?
Wow.
I sent away for all this you know, Mustang parts, fan stuff. But the part manual, which, you know, Hemmings Motor News, all that stuff back then. And I figured we would just work on it. My parents hit the roof. They were like, what the hell is this junk heap? What are we going to do? They called a friend of theirs, a mechanic, who came over and tried to help us get it started. Thing was seized. There was no possible way.
Oh, wow.
Long story short, my dad goes, all right, take it to your shop, check it out, see if we can get it running, and then if not, then we're going to get rid of it.
Yeah.
A couple of months later, he doesn't hear from the guy. Another month goes by, guy finally shows up, driving the car, comes to my parents' house, hands him a bill for $1,700. And this is the early 80s.
Dad, what do I say to this, Dad? Dad, if you're watching this video, you remember this conversation that we had too?
I mean, my dad hit, I mean, you know, hit the roof. And so I said, all right, well, what if I'll pay you back, but the car ran, had brakes. And I'm like, oh, that happened way too fast. I don't have my license. I'm not ready to go. And what the hell are we going to do with this car? So I washed it. I tried to do all the things I could do without driving.
You're taking care of it.
Yeah. We went to a parking lot. My dad let me drive it a little bit. But, I mean, yeah, I was still I wasn't even 13 years old yet, right? I had almost 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So, turns out my sister is moving to Vermont. Mm-hmm. She needs a car. My dad gives her the car.
That's my car.
Yeah, and I'm like,
that's my car.
On one hand, I'm like, that's my car. You're killing me. And on the other hand, I'm like, well, you know, I got 3.5 years. Like, it's going to sit around. I didn't want it to get rotten or whatever, and to go back to the condition it was. So she takes the car, right? Epilogue to this: she's in Vermont. She hates the car, but she's keeping it. Comes back in the summer, driving a neon green Westphalia Volkswagen bus that she sold the she sold the Mustang
Do you still have the VIN for? Because you could probably track it down.
You know what? I was looking through. It's in my parents' stuff somewhere. I was looking through it. I was trying to find it. I can't find it. I don't know what it is. What the VIN was. It's got to be somewhere.
Someone has it.
Someone has it.
If you have his car,
red 3-speed 289 2-barrel.
There you go.
66.
Reach out to Mike. He probably wants it back.
I mean,
pristine.
Right. It's one of maybe 500,000 that they made in that spec, but
You never know.
Yeah. If you bought it in 1980, early 80s at some point,
hit him up.
Hit me up. If you bought it in Vermont, that'd be Anyway, so that's the first car that I didn't drive. First car I did drive was a '73 Buick Century 4-door that I bought. I had no money. I had spent all my money on guitars, so that was my second thing that I was into, was playing the guitar, and I was in a band. So like all of my other money went there. I had $500 to buy a car, and this old man had a '73 Buick Century in his garage, and my friend of mine knew him and said, "Hey, would you come over and take a look?" So I came over and took a look, and it turns out it was pristine. It was like 20,000 miles on it, right? There were still the original bias ply tires on it. There were like a set of snow tires in the back. It was unbelievable. It was like this perfect, like, time capsule 1973 car. Except I look in and there's a column shifter. I look down, there's 3 pedals.
How do I do this?
It's a freaking 3 on the tree, and I didn't even know they still were making 3 on the tree. So my first car, I pull out, same gas, like an imbecile, same gas in the tank.
Wow.
I go to drive it home, right? Gets home. I figure it out. I mean, it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Fairly similar to a regular car. I mean, regular shifter.
Different position.
Yeah, a little bit different. Yeah, I mean, eventually, like, the linkage would be a problem, but I didn't know this yet because I had another problem.
Yeah.
I got home and the car won't run because guess what? I just sucked into the fuel line. Old gas, rust, who knows what else. So, had to learn immediately how to fix a fuel line. So that was like how it started. The car was really cheap, but once I got the gear shift put on the floor, I found a transmission guy that would take that job. It was almost 100% custom. He kept the same crappy Saginaw 3-speed in it, and he cut a hole. I don't know how he did it. I actually didn't see it, but he machined a coupling to put a Hurst 3-speed stick on it. So there I had, all of a sudden I had a car, it's a 352 barrel, stick shift, and it's a 4-door, looks like Kojak drives. And all of a sudden I had a sleeper.
Where's the glasses?
I know, exactly. I mean, seriously, like it
looked the same thing?
It looked exactly the same. It had Steelies and the little center caps.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Kojak's car, but with stick shift, and I all of a sudden, it being the '80s, like I could keep up with modern Mustangs and not as much, Camaros. Yeah. Not the best Camaros, but the 305 Camaro I could keep up with. Not
base
that
Camaros.
Exactly. I mean, what was 0 to 60 in 12 seconds anyway, or whatever it was. I don't know. Not to.
Where's my donut?
Right, exactly.
12 seconds. What's going on?
Not to bag on the '80s too much, but they weren't quite. It wasn't known for its fast cars. But anyway, that was a sort of palette in which, or what's the artistic? It was a canvas on which I could do a little bit of work. Yeah, exactly.
Your white canvas.
Yeah. So
hold that thought. We'll come back for a commercial break and we'll go from there. So there. Mike Spinelli, we're at the museum hanging out. Beautiful cars. We'll probably talk later out more about the cars that are here. But again, Mike, cars.
Yeah.
This is the beautiful thing that everybody in the world needs to go to A to B.
Yeah.
We talked about your cars. What cars do you see that are coming in the future now that are changing?
Wow. All right, so that's a loaded question. I mean, it's funny because everyone's talking about autonomous cars as if it's coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's a long way. There's a lot of interim solutions that are going to happen. There are going to be a lot of opportunities for cars to use technology to be faster and quicker and better on the Nürburgring, all that performance stuff too. Okay, at the same time, we're all sort of wishing that we had cars that felt better, right? That
it's from the way I've been looking at it, it's more as people want the come of age of the Jetsons to be here now.
Yeah, exactly.
But the question is that there's a lot of regulations out there that still have to be put on a fence.
Right.
So OEMs don't go, all right, we want to do it this way.
Yeah.
Because I see, like, speaking of Mercedes has already this brain trust.
Right.
Way ahead of Tesla of saying we want to be here first because we started in the 1800s.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure. And
because
German engineers don't want to lose to American engineers. It's just that, and I don't mean that that's, as a national, it's a national pride thing for Germany and their engineers, because our accountants are what they see their engineers. We have the best accountants in the world, right? We could,
crunch numbers all day.
Crunch numbers all day. We could take a giant company, another giant company, put them together, and they become, something that'll, fortunately or unfortunately, that's how we see ourselves. Yeah. Germany sees themselves wholly through their engineering, and we have great engineers too. I mean, there's no doubt. Engineers in the big three are unsung heroes because they have to listen to the accountants and they have to do what they say, and then they also have to produce a product that the
market wants.
The market wants.
Yeah.
And so I think they get short shrift a lot because they're only as good as what the engineering brief they're getting is. So anyway, that's my rant on engineering. But you tell the engineers what you want and you will get there. But the problem is if the accountants don't want what the engineers, the accountants want what they want and the engineers will give them that. They just have to. They're defining it in ways that are good for business, not necessarily good for car enthusiasm. That's a lot of the problem.
Tesla.
Yeah.
I've known that you have a little love and hate relationship.
I totally
because
do.
In one aspect, everybody's putting Tesla on a pedestal to say, all right, we're going to do this. This is where we're going. But then, where do you see the train of OEMs?
Right. Well, it's so funny because we're at this period right now where we're looking at 3 or 4 different technologies, and we don't know which one is really going to be the one. I think there's a giant and growing group of people that really feel that the electric motor is going to be the predominant thing. De facto, yeah, exactly. The de facto winner.
Yeah.
We're looking at a decade in which the internal combustion engine has seen the kinds of efficiency gains and reduction in emissions that you can't believe it. You could breathe out of the back of a Porsche tailpipe now. It's literally the cleanest it's ever been.
All right, so now this leads me to the next question is, the electric car is coming out, ICE's here.
Yeah.
Where do you see that transition, that actual crosshairs where it says, all right, in the next 30, 40, 50 years, ICE's gone?
Well, okay, so it's so funny because if you're a nerd, right, you got to look at you got to look at the framework behind both of those things, right? The framework behind electric motors is batteries, and the framework behind batteries right now is lithium, right? So you have to look at the places around the world and the lithium infrastructure, right? So you look at who's got lithium, South America, Afghanistan, there are places where lithium, then it becomes a strategic asset, and next thing you know, there's global geopolitics. So we don't want to go into that. We're in a car place. Same thing with oil. We already know how global geopolitics and oil get together, right? So that's the framework in which the engineers who create this stuff operate. It comes down to, can Tesla and Panasonic and everybody else building batteries make a battery that cycles through charge and discharge in a way that is the same to the user as an internal combustion engine? When is that going to happen? It could be 5 years.
You see it now. The media is going after it. The OEMs are pushing so hard because they realize Tesla is the elephant,
right?
And everybody knows this. The question becomes of how do we present our wares and our services to that industry, saying, listen, we're getting there, but we're doing it our way.
Right. And it's so funny to see Tesla in the same way that, I mean, having come out of the .com world, I've seen how companies get these massive valuations, and then they have to turn all of that fake money that the market gives them into real products. I mean, you got to hand it to Tesla that they've built a car. Nobody has ever built a car in the way that they did. Granted, they got government help. They have a great facility in California that used to be Toyota and GM used to the NUMMI plant. So they have the framework. They have a great designer, Klaus von. What guy? I can't believe his name.
Right. Don't worry about Klaus.
No,
we got the name, but
it's not Klaus. It's I'll think of it later. Great guy, actually American for having this super German name. He's actually American. Great designer, and then they followed through. Right? They built a car.
Well, Elon said in the beginning he wanted to build a car that made sense, not only for human consumption, but for the environment.
Right. Well, I mean, people get sort of caught up in why electric cars are good for the environment. Because you have coal power plants, you have natural gas power plants, you have nuclear power plants, right? They're all putting stuff out. I mean, the benefit to the environment is that they're controllable, right? You can control and regulate the outputs and the emissions from those singular places. It's way easier to do that than to have, 80 million cars on the road, all with different, that part of it isn't my
I know it's
field.
not your forte, but there is a story there, because now it becomes of when we have kids and everybody watching, when they see their kids, there's going to be that turning point of like, oh, I had 4 on the floor, 357, it was cranking. Now, my motor is an AC killing out 10,000 watts.
Exactly. They're going to figure it out. And this is the crazy thing about young automotive enthusiasts with a tinkering mentality like we had. And not even like there were kids that really were tinkerers. But in the 80s, cars were slow and not that great. But cars from the 60s and 70s, and even in some cases the 50s, and big V8s, and even small V8s. Everything was cheap, so you could create a car in your backyard, basement, wherever you could, on the street even in some cases. That could do 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, or a quarter mile in 12, if you had a little bit of knowledge of things. So it's like what do you have at hand? And then the 90s came along. It's Japanese cars, right? So, Honda comes out with the VTEC, and all of a sudden,
it blows up.
Right.
Not literally.
Not literally.
Not literally.
Sometimes literally, but and then all of a sudden, front wheel drive drag racing, and then all of a sudden, all wheel drive comes out. So it's like there's always going to be an economy class of car, and there's always going to be people who want to tinker,
the enthusiasts,
whatever that is, and they'll figure it out. They use last generation parts, maybe if electric takes over, they take. The great thing about electric is that torque. I mean, it's just amazing, right?
On and go.
I mean, if you've ever been in a Tesla Model S P90D, 0 to 60, Porsche 911 Turbo. But quicker. But a little bit quicker. I don't know. Well, that's a matter for driver and discussion. Rimac, yes.
What do you think?
I mean, you know what?
Is he going to be the Tesla for sports cars?
It's really interesting to see where another company, Koenigsegg, is working with them on hybrid parts. So, I mean, if Christian von Koenigsegg, who is the world's biggest supercar nerd, I think, is working with Rimac, then there's got to be something there. It's got to be there are definitely engineers that can speak the same language, and that it's not vaporware. Because there's the opportunity for vaporware in the car, the electric supercar industry is tremendous.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that's really interesting.
But when Rimac, I mean, I think the car is great looking, the thing that they're doing. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm optimistic. I'd like to. We're hopefully going to get there this year.
Just like you.
Yeah.
It's just because I've been following him with Tesla, and it's almost like Tesla's more in his segment, but Rimac, he did a thing with Salamander.
Yeah.
With the 918.
Right. Yeah.
And then that blew up because people said, if it can do a 918,
right,
it can do a lot of other cars out there.
Sure.
And then I see what you're saying with, Koenigsegg saying, we got to team up because we can kill this market.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's an amazing place in the car market, though. Right now, the million to 3 million market, right? Yeah. It's like, who thought that? I mean, you have to have, every industry has to have a moonshot part of it. It has to have its fighter jets. It has to have
GT.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You have to have a place to put the engineers and say, go for it.
Here's the keys.
Yeah, just build the best possible thing in this, sort of really high spec category. Like, you have to have that, or else you have nothing to either trickle down to. Like, you have to aim.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why when you looked at a Ferrari F40 in 1986 or 87, you went kaboom, like, and it was
because people thought that was the all-it car.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's close to a Formula One car for the street you could get, right?
At that time.
At that time, right? I mean,
now you got McLaren going, oh wait, hold on, we're going one up.
30 years later, you've got these cars that are. It's like building an F-16, right? And it's
almost that's the process.
Yeah.
McLaren has the same process. Their plant is literally like, we're building not only the best car in the world, but we're engineering the best car in the world.
And the great thing about McLaren is that their engineering is what the rest of the company does, right? So they have a great applied engineering department that takes the stuff that they learn from Formula One racing, from material science, from aerodynamics. They know more about aerodynamics there than some, I wouldn't say airplane manufacturers, but a lot of other, they're pretty close. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We're going to be on a commercial, and we'll come back right after sponsor. So we're back. Mike Spinelli, the man himself, talking more about cars, what got him going. Quick question.
Yeah.
So we've gone through the whole history of the car industry getting to this point.
Right.
We talked a little bit about the future.
Okay.
Do you think the flying car is coming?
I think that...
No, but like in a serious sense. Because
I do. I think it's really serious.
I've asked people about like where they see 20, 30 years down the road, because I'm a gearhead, you're a gearhead, we still love ICE.
Yeah. Well, no, I think there's an answer for that. I think the answer is quadcopters. And I think that if you could people look at me and go, quadcopters, what the hell? What we're seeing in the drone world right now, because we, with filming videos, we do a lot of work with drones, and I'm fascinated with racing drones now and all that stuff. I think that there's an opportunity, and this is where, people talk about, the disruption, right? That word that we always hear. I think that full-size quadcopter builders, as the, obviously, batteries, everything has to mature together for this to work. Yeah. But there's a possibility that quadcopters will, in some way, leapfrog cars, right?
Okay.
Not tomorrow, right?
No. I got it.
But you're right.
Saying,
and I think that that's something that we have to really sort of consider down the road, that this thing that flies may be based on what we know as a drone, right? Yeah. Because all of that technology is being driven at the low end and the small end, but people are starting to build like cycles.
You've seen the video with the guy.
I mean, I wouldn't want to have a bunch of
you sit there like, oh my God, my fingers.
But like, at some point, someone is going to start throwing a bunch of money at that, at actual drones. Because I mean, if you remember the Mahler,
but that's the thing. People looked at it because he was doing this in the 80s.
Yeah.
And people looked at him like, is he up to par?
He was a little bit crazy, but
his crazy got him to say, all right, you know what? DARPA's looking into this.
Right.
All the big guys, a lot of countries are looking into it because they realize it's not because of the military aspect. It's more of we need to change the community, how they actually get to A to Z.
Well, it'll change everything, right? Imagine if like a city doesn't need roads to get in. So, I mean, the thing that's going to enable that is the possibility of virtual.
No, of course. VR is I think is a stepping stone, because once, if you guys haven't tried VR, try it. It's awesome. It's a unique aspect of how we actually look in our world as opposed to in a digital world. But the cool thing about VR is that it actually helps you transcend, big word, that actually helps you transcend that leap into, I can put on this headset, look into what I'm doing, and then once, like you're saying, is that once kids get into the VR thing,
right,
the kids are going to grow up and like, hey son, look, I've done VR 10 years ago,
right,
now we're flying.
So imagine this scenario, right? You put on your headset. Satellites have created virtual roads in the sky, right?
There's a racetrack based on drones where the drones are using GPS to actually do the track.
Right. So imagine a real foolproof GPS, a GPS in which like there's so many satellites that there's plenty of fail-safe, so that drones don't start running into each other in the air. But like it's sort of a three-dimensional map of a three-dimensional navigational map that drones will follow. So you combine that with autonomous, and you actually get the thing that was on the cover of Popular Mechanics magazine in 1957, right? With like the Jetsons.
Now the future's finally reaching to us.
Exactly. Right. So I think that's something. Obviously, not tomorrow. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? 20, 30, 40 years. But just think about how technology keeps accelerating. How the development of stuff keeps accelerating. And for every, just look at how many private companies are going into space, right? So all of those technologies are being developed, all of that navigational stuff. I mean, if you think of technology as this sort of, this sea of unrelated things, then it'll never happen. But if you start thinking about all of these parts that are being developed independently, that eventually will come together.
They're mesh. Space. Now we're at that point where we're finally getting to supercars, where the new system,
running out of space.
Are we getting to what do you see? Are we really going to get to 300? And what do you think that's going to happen after 300?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, like, to get to 300, like they're
that's a lot of radiators.
It's a lot of radiators, but like, there are guys in Florida putting on turbos on 4GTs, and they're getting about as close as you can get. It's a lot of horsepower because as physics tells us, the amount of horsepower you need to get that last
2 miles.
Well, with that last 100 miles an hour, right? So you get to 200, you need, I don't know, I think it's 4 times the amount of horsepower to get to.
But then the coefficient has to be.
Then your drag.
It's a really interesting science. If you guys are interested in science, do it. And when you say, "Oh, science is never for me," this is where science is very critical in designing cars.
Yeah, but Dodge has a car, right? The Dodge, the new Challenger Demon.
I've seen a video.
840 horsepower on 100 octane. From a dealership, it does a wheelie, right? Like a car that does a wheelie from a dealership, that's not like Baldwin Motion from the 60s, right? Back when you could put the giant engine in the smallest car and then sell it for a bunch of money. I'm sure there's some of those in this museum. But the output, the specific output of engines, performance engines, just keeps going up. The tire technology keeps getting better and better. The compounds keep getting grippier and grippier, and less. There's less fall off. It's less like a race tire, more like a street tire that can do 250 miles an hour. Michelin's got bespoke tires that can do 270 maybe. That's at the edge of their effectiveness technology. But like that's just going to keep on going. Those guys aren't standing still.
You have almost a good relationship with Koenigsegg.
Yeah, Christian's a great guy.
Yeah. So I don't want to get into his technology stuff, but do you see Christian doing some other car besides what he has now?
I think Christian, I mean, I sort of see them doing...
Because at the press day at the New York Auto Show, he was a little standoffish. Because I didn't want to press him, but I was like, I know you're coming out with something else.
Yeah, he's not going to talk. Yeah, that's the thing. He's never going to say it. But
he's not. I know he's not going to say anything to you.
Well, one of the things...
But what's your feeling?
One of the things he's working on now is, and that I think other engineers have been working on it in the past too, is using, well, and actually Honda, I think Honda Racing MotoGP bikes uses pneumatic valves, right? So once you take the cam out of the equation, and computers can control
spark, fuel, air, the whole nine.
Right. I mean, all of a sudden, then you get to another efficiency leap in internal combustion engines. That's where he's working real hard with a company called Free Valve.
Yeah.
And so he's really interested in that side of it too, in the efficiency side. You know, because it's all about efficiency, right? It's all about getting
saving
the most,
gas.
Well, it's all about getting the most
APEC, right?
power, the most effectiveness out of the least amount of fuel or energy source.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not just, you know, sort of Earth Day stuff. I mean, that makes faster cars, right? So even if your goal is to make a faster car, it's also
smarter to save energy.
It's all about smarter, right?
Do you see Koenigsegg going F1?
No.
Has he ever talked about that?
No, but I don't. I think F1 is. I don't know about F1. I don't know how F1 is going to survive, right? Because I mean, I think what's happening is that F1 is a fantastic incubator for great technologies in aerodynamics and in hybrid and eventually probably electric. Formula E now is trying to...
I'm actually speaking with the Andretti's.
Oh, cool.
Mario, Marco, get him on the show as well. And that was one of my things because I see that we're at a pivot point in time now that we're actually going to get to the point of we're going from IC to electric.
Yeah.
And F1 has KERS.
Right.
And the question became of when is that transition going from KERS to, all right, we're going to go to electric now?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, so F1 has to be somewhat related to the cars you see on the street, right? Or else it sort of eats into what their narrative is. Like, that's their thing.
Yes.
I mean, you could create a racing series that has nothing to do with the cars you see on the road, and it would be probably fun, but who would pay for it, right? Who would get the... I mean, you need a Mercedes, you need a Ferrari, and you need Honda eventually to kind of come around and build an engine that can be competitive. Renault. I mean, you need companies that have their names on other cars to get the marketing benefit from F1. But the problem with F1 is that, like... is the problem, I mean, the problem with racing in general is that race organizers have to make it more accessible and cheaper for the sponsors to get involved, right? And the teams to play in that field, right? And the TV rights to be beneficial to everybody and all that stuff. Yeah. And right now it's this really delicate balance of things. I mean, is it the most exciting kind of racing? No, I mean, I watch MotoGP and I go, holy crap, this is where the best racing, head-to-head, like two guys racing each other, really skilled, that's where it's the most exciting racing. If Formula One can get to where MotoGP is, I don't know. And then again, like, people need to still want to watch racing. Like, racing still has to be relevant to people. I don't know. Like, it's like kids, I know sort of some younger people that are into Formula One because of the technology. And so that's the best you could hope for. It's the millennials going, I love tech, and I want to see it on F1. Right. And then for us, as we get older, now we're going, like, you know what, I like gasoline because I like playing, I can tune the carburetor. Right, because we know what's going on. I can tune my computer on the car. Yeah. But racing has to be exciting. Like, racing has to feel... Like, maybe VR, right? Maybe virtual reality is going to be the thing that brings racing to life a little bit for people. Because, frankly, like, you get kids... Verizon's working on it. Yeah, sure. I heard Verizon wants to put in that 3D camera in the car. Yeah. So if you're at a track, throw on your set, you can literally spin around the whole car going down the road. Right. Yeah. But you look at, for most kids... Gran Turismo and Forza are getting so much better. And if you're a real nerd, like you play like Assetto Corsa or something else, and they're getting really, I mean, why watch racing when you can race, right? So that, I think, somehow those two entities have to get together, right? Formula One and video games need to somehow come together and create a new product that I don't know what that is. Like I can't even picture what that is. Because I like the regular racing.
Hit him up.
Hit me up. I'll do what I can. It's a really, that's the thing. It's like, what is the thing relevant to the audience? And I don't know. These like kids can race the Nürburgring pretty damn good on these, on these
look at Hamilton.
Newfangled gadgets.
But look at Hamilton.
Right, exactly.
He started from a little kid. Same thing with Vettel. They started as little kids. They're big guys now.
Sure.
And you start to see these other guys come in, and you're like, all right, there is that cross of, are we gonna start augmenting VR to this, and then technology comes around.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, there's something in there somewhere for somebody to develop. It's a developer issue, and it's a racing issue. And because you know what, like racers will race. Like you give them a car, they will race. Racers are a special breed of people, as competitive as you can get, and they're amazing at what they do. And so I would hate to see their talents go to waste. So something has to come together. That's the thing.
For me, my two biggest things was WTCC, World Touring.
Sure.
And my other one was, oh my God, I can't remember it, but I'll probably remember it on top of my head. But it was World Cup.
Oh. WRC?
Yeah, WRC.
Oh, good. Rally. World Rally. Yeah.
Because they actually brought it down to the consumer's level, saying we're actually using, cars from the dealership, converting them, and they're running the streets.
Right. So that's another thing, right? So that on the other end of the spectrum, totally right. Grassroots motorsports. I think more kids are getting into things like rallying and drifting and actually participating in that stuff than ever before. I mean, I've heard that it's kind of a bumpy business, but I mean, I know a lot of younger guys in their 20s that are drifting every weekend. They're going over to Englishtown to obviously this is sort of I don't know if there's a closer place here, but like Club Loose at Englishtown, grassroots rallying. There's all kinds of stuff happening. Among sort of that bunch of dudes that are just sort of tinkering on the weekends or tinkering during the week after they get home from work, and then they go to the gravel rally stage on the weekends, and so I mean that's accessible. That actually, so you need those two parts of racing, right? You need the completely aspirational, the total engineering exercise,
up in the sky,
moonshot stuff, and then you also need something that people can relate to. I mean, there's always been that sprint car racing, and NASCAR, you go to any county fair, and there's either a demolition derby or like a sprint race with old Caprices and stuff. I mean, that's racing is kind of in our national blood in some way.
It's up there with cherry pie, apple pie, hamburgers. Yeah. It's in our blood.
Yeah. I mean, in a way that Europeans think. I don't mean to put us against Europeans because I always hear this, but like their racing heritage is a little bit different than ours, and ours when they come over here and experience what like middle of the country racing is like. They can't believe it. Like I had some friends from France.
It's completely different, yes.
Yeah, who went to college, who went to University of Iowa, right? And went out and saw the school bus races and went out to the figure eights and the
lawnmower
tractor, the tractor stuff, and like watching a 10,000, I don't know, I mean like a 5,000 horsepower, 9,000 pound-foot of torque diesel tractor puller. I mean, these things are insane, and they get into it. I mean, it's like I think that I mean everybody has to kind of accept that everybody's version of racing may be a little bit different. But racing in general is never going away. I think people are always, if there's somebody else with something a little bit faster, exactly, is going to want
going down there
go up against it. Exactly. So, I mean, I don't think racing is ever going to go away. It's going to have to change with the times, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that a cop out?
No, it's not.
But you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly.
Something's got to. Yeah.
All right, let's flip it to the public. Alex Roy.
Yeah.
You know him. I followed him.
I know him.
It's not to put that trophy on there because I know there was a big thing with Rawlings.
Oh, with him.
Yeah.
Well, there's also another guy that came along and did it too. So you're talking about the coast to coast.
Yeah, the coast to coast.
Yeah.
What I would like to see, and I have a couple of investors that are.
Investors. You said the I word, my friend.
I have investors. They're actually interested in seeing this electric.
He did it with a Tesla.
But I seen that.
You're talking about speed record.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, it all comes down to battery. Because if you're going full out, if you're going like full throttle or an average speed of 100 miles an hour, right, which is quick, you're going to be burning through that battery
very quickly,
really quickly, and then it's going to take you. 2 hours. I mean, so that's again, like that, we're still there. I mean, eventually.
Because this leads up to
you could do a relay.
Yes, but then there's a lot of logistics.
Tricky. The logistics
I read the logistics that he had to go through.
Yeah.
Same thing with Rawlings had to go through.
Yeah.
But I like to see electric.
It would be amazing. I mean, I love to see any technology pushed to its limit. I mean, I think.
You're a geek for technology.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
do you like the nursing aids or the nanny aids in cars?
It's funny you should mention because I drove here in my 2002 Jaguar XJR.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, that thing has a very, very old rudimentary traction control.
Okay.
Stability control.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I have it on, it's either on, and I can't get off the line because. The nanny's like telling me not to. So it's there, but it's annoying. And then you get into a modern like a Porsche, GT3, right? And it's quick. It happens without you really knowing it.
It's another mind.
It's
outside.
Another mind. And I apologize for using this so much, but it's the Iron Man suit as a car, right?
Yes.
It's gotten to that point because the computer speeds inside the car are quicker. The bus speeds where everything jumps around, it's so much quicker. The obviously storage is computer storage, so they can write the code, they could fire it off, and then they have. The actuators are quicker. They use accelerometers that are quicker. I mean, everything is quicker so that you can get closer and closer to that nanosecond moment of when the car needs to adjust itself for the optimum performance. Yeah. Now, obviously, if you spent your life trying to become the best driver, it's annoying to say the least to have this guy. Like I was driving with Patrick Long, Porsche factory driver. Yeah. And I'm chasing him in a 918 at Austin. This is the 918 launch. And he's one of my idols. I mean, fantastic driver, won Le Mans, like Daytona. Like the guy's a fantastic driver. Yeah. And I felt terrible for him because here I come in a 918, and he's in a 911 Turbo S.
Wow. And
we come around. There's this corner at Austin where it's a really really sharp. Almost, I think it's almost more than 180 degrees. I don't know. Actually, it's not 180. It's like I don't know, 100 degrees.
Okay.
So you come down through it, and he goes in perfect. Of course, I'm, like all over the place. I don't know whether. I mean, I don't know where the turn-in line is, where the point is, and I catch him. Right. He takes off, and I catch him in the 918 halfway into that straight at 170 miles an hour.
Wow.
This jackass, and this guy that spent his life training
professionally. And
so, and it's not to say that I could ever, match a lap time of his in that car, with those technologies on, which I'm sure he has a few of them off.
Because that would be interesting to watch a pro in an actual manual, no computer car to A non-pro in a
I hope
computer
they'll
car.
still win. I hope they'll still win, which I think he will, but I think it's getting harder and harder for him because these technologies. All right, so the question is this good or bad, right?
Yes.
It's bad.
That's the eventuality.
Right, exactly. It's good for the technology. It's good to make performance accessible to people.
Yeah.
It's good for racetracks, right? It's good for people who buy these cars who want to race on a racetrack. It's a good reason to build a racetrack, right? Because we need more racetracks. I did a story about 10 years ago about all the abandoned racetracks that were built in the 60s, and then all of a sudden people started watching on television, stopped going to the races, and the landscape is dotted with abandoned racetracks. So any reason to build more racetracks is good, I think, because then other people with Miatas and no traction control can build the thing and use it on a track day. So I think the idea is this is all coming together into something that as we move toward autonomous cars and cars that drive themselves, and driving becomes more of a power sport, then we may have a car that drives us to the track, towing our race car in the back,
and it's going to drive on the car.
And we sleep on the way to the racetrack. Like this is my dream
future,
for autonomous cars. Is that you have an autonomous F-250, right, with a trailer in the back, and you've got your whatever it is, your track car. You know, maybe it's a Caterham, maybe it's a, you know, maybe it's an old Trans Am
W6.
Spec. Yeah, exactly right. Or whatever it is, but it's a race car. It's an enthusiast car, and then you go there, you tear up the racetrack, you get back in the car, you take a nap on the way home, and the autonomous truck drives you home. So that's
the future.
I think to me that feels like a future that is,
because there's talk back in the past where they wanted to do F1 type cars autonomously. Right. And this is about 6-7 years ago, before autonomous is big.
Mm-hmm. I think that could happen. I don't know whether it remains to be seen whether people will want to watch racing between robots. I mean, if they can crash into each other, I mean, it's got to. Could you imagine like a something that looks like a video game, but you're watching it at or controlling it in some way? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe that's some part of it, but I think the idea of enthusiast driving, racetrack driving, sports car driving, making it something that you do as a recreation. I mean, obviously it's not great if you live in a place like California, where if you commute from Van Nuys to somewhere or to Malibu, and you can go up and over the canyons every day. Okay.
Matt loves that. Wow.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, obviously for them, if you can't drive on the street, it's going to be terrible. Maybe those will end up as just enthusiast roads, and they're sort of like regulated-ish, but not. I don't know. Like I
can see the future where they'll post a sign, like this is a history sign of blah blah. The kids in there, and we're in the year 1993.
Right.
In 2005, this used to be a canyon carver road. And blah blah. I can see.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Like I don't like these kids that are on the canyons now with their Subarus and Miatas and whatever else they have, Mitsubishis. To name three of many, BMWs, whatever. They're young and they're not going to want to give this up. I don't think that. So they're going to. So once things, 20 years for them is they're only going to be in their 40s, right? What's it going to look like? It's going to be different, but they're already.
It's still be here. Yeah.
It's still going to be. It's got to still be here because you know that they're going to make sure it's still here.
Wow. Your favorite car?
Oh God! Don't do that.
Yes, come on.
My favorite car.
Because you never. I looked for videos. Were you actually talking about this subject?
I've never talked about it because I don't. I just feel like.
Are you biased, or it's just more?
No, I can't. It's
because
like,
there's a lot. Look, we got this entire building.
I can't.
You just came from a car show.
Oh man, it's really tough for me to pick a favorite car because I have so many. I mean, my favorite.
All right, let's do this. Top 3.
All right. Well, I mean, so you got to go back to when I was a kid. The car that I loved above all others was the Ferrari 308 GT,
Okay.
GT, any of them, GTB, GTI, GTSI, whatever it was. I wouldn't want that car now. I mean, first of all, like,
After
so this is where the
knowing-
practicality
yeah,
starts,
after knowing,
starts
yeah.
ruining everything,
Yeah.
right? They're going for too much money. But like old Ferraris of that era are, for me, the cars that I had on my wall. I had, the up to the F40 and back to,
That's the Sarah Fawcett era, when everybody had Sarah Fawcett on the wall.
I had I won the Farrah Fawcett poster at a fair. They used to put the posters rolled up, and then it was a ring toss, and and I got the Farrah Fawcett one, and I also got I think it was the Cheryl Tiegs one or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the idea that you tend to go back to the car that you loved when you were at your most formative as a teenager or younger, right? So that I can't ignore Ferraris because that's where that was there.
That was their thing.
But at the same time, my first slot car track was Datsun 510 and Datsun 240Z.
That was Matchbox. I know you thought it's like Tyco or something like that.
It was AFX.
Yeah.
And it was the John Morton. I don't know if you know. The John Morton SCCA Trans Am car, right? So that it was both of the cars that he raced. The one in '70 that beat the Alfa Romeos, and then the one in '69. I think, or I'm 71. I can't remember. But anyway, so those I have a soft spot for those, the lineage of Japanese cars that started with that too. So I have to put 510 and 240Z in there, right? But
that's because the 240 started this whole.
Yeah, right. Because it was the
rear-wheel
affordable
drive,
Ferrari.
let's go fast as possible.
Right. It was a car that looked like a Ferrari, that was designed by people who loved Ferraris, and it was, relatively cheap. My uncle bought one for $2,300. I mean, obviously it was 1970, so it would be like 23, but like 23,000 now. I mean, that's in the wheelhouse for people, for So so I mean, I think if I had to pick two, it would be one of the Ferraris, probably F40, because I think that one hit me, harder, and the 240Z.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. We're here with Mike, talking about who he is, what he's about. Subscribe below in the box. Subscribe. There'll be more on the description box as well. So, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is a fantastic museum. Come down here. What's this museum called?
The American Museum of Wheels.
In Allentown, Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's great. They have one of my other favorite cars is the Cougar. Sorry,
it's
67 Cougar.
Yeah. So subscribe. Look for Mike on his channel. The Drive.
Yep.
Plug it.
YouTube.com/drive and also thedrive.com.
There we go.
Yes.
Enjoy, guys.
Hey guys, thank you for watching the video with Mike Spinelli that we had today at America on Wheels. Again, a big shout out to Linda Merkel. She's the executive director of Wheels on America. Cool place to actually bring your family, have a good time, talk about cars, talk about the history of cars. They have other stuff there as well, trucks, bikes, motorcycles. Really cool place to bring family, have a good time. Great place to actually have a lunch for business, corporate events, whatever. But big shout out to Linda Merkel. She's down in the link below. Just click on the link and go there. Also, let us know any comments and subscribe. More subscribers come on. Great for content that we develop. Also, the sweepstakes that we're doing, as you guys know, it's started already. Sign up for the sweepstakes. No purchase necessary at all, but sign up. One person actually gets 1 year worth of car payments, 1 year's worth of insurance, and 1 year worth of maintenance. All on us. All you gotta do is subscribe. The link's below on the bottom. Just subscribe. Once we go live in a couple of months, you'll start seeing more information about the sweepstakes, about what we're doing, who we are, what we're about. Again, it's in the link below in the description box. Subscribe. Talk to you soon. See you on the rebound.